Good morning, YouTube. It's March 15th. It's Monday. You know what that means. It's time for another installment of Fundamentals of Go by Toshiro Kageyama. We are on Chapter 7, How to Study Joseki. This question comes up a lot, regardless of one's skill level in Go, and hopefully Kageyama has some wonderful insights for us. So let's delve right into it. How to study Joseki. A remark overheard one clear morning. I'm going to follow my Joseki and take the dog out for a walk. A conversation overheard in a crowd of people leaving a theater. Everything was arranged to bring about a happy ending. Yes, just like a Joseki, but it was still interesting. A television sportcaster describing a baseball game. Here, the Joseki would be to bunt the runner up to second and hope the next batter drives him home, but let's see what they do. These days, the word Joseki has come into general use to describe any fixed form of behavior. There can hardly be anyone who does not know what a Joseki is, but just to be sure, let's look in the dictionary, where it is defined as stones played in accordance with the fixed formula in the game of Go. To those who think that one way to become stronger at Go is to learn 40 or 50 Josekis by heart, I say go ahead and try it. Anything you do will add to your experience. At the same time, I wonder what good it does to learn 40 or 50 out of tens of thousands of Joseki. Let's imagine that someone, deciding that he ought to at least to know the currently popular Joseki, has pretty well memorized the ones coming from the two-space high pincer, he has a good memory, and sets out to put his knowledge to the test. Diagram 1. He plays the two-space high pincer with black 1. His colleague white replies with 2. Aha! Says black, and he pushes through and cuts with 3 and 5, the moves he has learned. White, however, who does not know any Joseki, blocks him at 6, muttering something about kill or be killed. Black is taken aback. This was not in the book. Next, he quite possibly becomes confused and plays some idiotic move and loses his cornerstones in less time than it takes to say Long John Silver. Finally, he resorts to insulting his opponent. What's the fun of playing Go with a jerk who doesn't know any Joseki, he says, and so on. A sad end to a sad affair. I can't handle players who don't know Joseki. Suggests that those who are ignorant of Joseki are stronger than those who know them. The latter tend to become too dependent on patterns, thereby crippling their innate strength, and fall easy prey to the former, who have nothing but innate strength. There is something fundamentally amiss with being able to handle opponents who follow the Joseki and unable to handle those who do not. Joseki are composed of the best moves for both sides, or of essentially equal variations. Moves that depart from the Joseki are usually bad and deserve to be punished. White 6 in diagram 1 is unreasonable and can be punished by the black hane at A, after which white is divided in 2 and black's cutting stone at 5 is shining brightly. For that reason, it is better for white to play 6 at B and center his efforts on developing 4 and the triangled stone. Diagram 2. This is the Joseki. If black answers white 1 with 2, white 3 and 5 complete one of the variations. Most players, however, do not know how to handle non-Joseki moves. In fact, they exhaust themselves so much in worrying about Joseki that by the time they get to the more important places in the middle game and beyond, they are in no condition to fight and win. All the trouble they have taken to learn Joseki turns out not to do them the least good. It even weakens their game. I dare say that many people have been through this experience. Joseki scholarship equals weakness. Total self-reliance equals strength. We see these equations every day. One big question, then, is left. What of the large number of Joseki books that float around the country? If their mission was to help Go players become stronger, what has corrupted them into worse than useless bookshelf decorations? The answer lies in the doubtful ways in which they are studied. Personally, I consider studying Joseki to be one of the first steps in getting stronger. That is why there are so many Joseki books in existence. Now, let's look at the proper way to study them. The proper way to study Joseki. Number 1. Don't think all you have to do is learn the moves. That is not studying the Joseki. Number 2. Every stone played by both sides in a Joseki is the best move, so it is important to know the reason for it, its content, its meaning. If you can convince yourself as to why the stone is played where it is and why it is a good move, then you have done some studying. Number 3. Joseki moves are always the best moves on a local scale, but they sometimes become the worst moves in relation to the surrounding positions. That is what keeps Go from becoming dull, what makes it interesting. The above can be condensed into the single phrase, Joseki are not to be learned, but to be created. Do you understand what I'm saying? Professionals have, as might be expected, a detailed knowledge of Joseki, but that does not mean they know all the tens of thousands of them. From time to time they encounter Joseki they do not know in play, and put all their energies into figuring them out, sometimes reproducing the existing patterns, sometimes improving on it and creating a new Joseki. The latter case is by no means rare. Diagram 3. This is a Joseki that anyone can memorize quickly, but don't let yourself just memorize it. Work out the meaning of each stone in it. Why does white jump out to 2 spaces to 2? To blunt the effect of a black attack at A or B. Lightly, in Sente. Why does black play 3? To avoid having his cornerstone surrounded. Of course, moves other than black 3 are possible, but this is one pattern. From a local standpoint, it is sometimes complete as it stands, and sometimes wants further development. If you do not know at least this much when you play it, you deserve to be ridiculed for just copying moves. Now let's see white's light 2-space jump in actual use. Diagram 4. To exchange 1 for 2, then play 3 is extremely good in this position. White 3 is both an extension from the enclosure in the upper left corner and an attack on black triangled stone. 2 birds with 1 stone. Brilliant! Black 4 is the key attacking point, aiming at slicing through the gap between white's triangled stone and 1, if the chance arises. White 5 and 7 are not desirable moves, but their meaning is clear. You shall not slice through the gap, white 5. You shall not shut me in, white 7. Now that white is safely out in the open, he can counterattack against black's 2 stones to the left. Diagram 5. Bad. The difference between those 2 diagrams is that the corner enclosure in the upper left is now black. If anyone is so insensitive as to ignore this difference and play 1 and 3, I am past the point of anger. All I can do is burst out laughing. Black plays 4, as he did in the last diagram, and white is already in trouble. What else did he expect? Now, white shows his skill with 5 to 15, but black simply plays 16 and jumps out to 18, and the situation is exactly opposite from the last diagram. White has stones in trouble on both sides, and is being forced to fight under the burden of a large eyeless group. Locally, this is pure Joseki, but from the overall standpoint, it is a disaster for white. Diagram 6. Better. Since the 2-space jump gave a dubious result in the position in the last diagram, white starts by making himself safe with 1 and 3. Then, more deliberately, he invades at 5. White 1 to black 4 are another Joseki. You should seek the meaning of each of these moves on your own. Compared with diagram 5, white now has more leeway to work with. Diagram 7. Another idea. White 1 is also a Joseki move. Even amateurs, if they have advanced a little, know the Joseki up to the cut at 9. If they do not comprehend the reasons for each move in between, however, and make a mistake, then because this is close combat, the damage they suffer will naturally be large. Diagram 8. Returning to the 2-space jump, black 2 and 4 in reply are definitely not the Joseki, but there are plenty of brute force advocates who will play black 2 and 4 and such moves whenever the shape permits them, only too happy to be getting embroiled in a fight. One must be able to meet force with force. Recently, a fairly strong player failed to do this in a game I was watching. He was white and played 3 and 5. Diagram 9. After the previous diagram, black cut and cut again with 1 and 3, hell-bent on destruction, and the side that was destroyed was white. If all these high-handed moves really worked, then they would become the Joseki. Black's 2-space extension to 3 in diagram 3 would be a slack move, and white's 2-space jump to 1 in diagram 8 would be a mistake. Such is not the case, so there must be a flaw in black's play somewhere. If white cannot find it and lets himself be destroyed, he will just have to admit that he is not strong enough to punish black for his mistake. Diagram 10. Problem. White to play. When I gave this once at the Friday class at Central Hall for players from 5Q to 5-Dan during a lecture using a large Go board, hardly anyone in an audience of more than 100 came up with the right answer. Even with white's next move restricted to the 4 points A, B, C, and D, so the chances were 1 in 4, only a scattering of people guessed the answer. I was filled with sadness at the inability of amateurs to focus their power in the right direction. I began to realize why the brute force school of Gangster Go prospers so. Those who cannot find the correct move in a not so difficult position like this deserve to be roughed up a bit. Amateur Go seems to be a world where reason retreats in the face of unreason. White A is bad, black plays B. White B is bad, black plays C. White C is bad, black stops white by taking the point below C. With all these moves disposed of in the above fashion, only the correct answer, white D, remains. I asked one of the people who had guessed D, what should white do if black draws out of this Atari? Connect the point below D, came back the reply, immediately proving that he had not solved the problem at all. Diagram 11. White 1 is correct, but without the right continuation it does not do any good. White 3 is wrong. Black plays 4 and 6, and since his triangle cutting stone is also active, he has quite the good result. Diagram 12. White 1, 3, and 5 are good. Once the answer is given, it is obvious, but that is like the story of Columbus standing the egg on end. Once they saw how he did it, everyone felt let down, but before they were shown the secret, they were all shaking their heads in puzzlement. A man seated near the front asked a question about black 4. Diagram 13. Can't black turn out at 1 and then take profit with 3 if white plays 2? Was his query. Let white make a ponnuki like this, and the game is over, was my reply. The rest of the audience nodded in agreement. Compare this diagram with white's bad result in diagram 11. Among the things that occur to me on seeing diagram 11 are diagram 14. If white honeys at 1, black can capture with 2. Black 12 is a throw-in at 4, which white captures by playing 13 at 8. Black 18 captures 4 stones. Diagram 15. Or is this way of capturing white with black 2 to 12 better? Diagram 16. If black answers white 1 at 2, white can contain him with 3, gaining a thick position. So, diagram 17. Black should resist with 2, then play 4. Black 4 is the only move. Black A would let white play B in Sente. It takes quite a bit to have all of this register in one's mind on seeing diagram 11. Perhaps only a top-level amateur Dan player could read it all out. On the other hand, any player with the ambition at least has to be aware of all of these possibilities. Diagram 18. Black 1 to 5 are a very popular variation of the 2-space high pincer joseki. As I have said before, the moves are easy to learn, but they will not do you any good if you do not know their meanings. Why does white make the diagonal move at 2? Why is he in such a rush to slide in to 4? Isn't white 4 too low, down on the second line? What thought, what purpose lies behind black's knight's move to 3? Is black 5 necessary? Each stone has significance, which it will not do to pass over. Study this pattern until you really understand the meaning of each of its component moves. If you acquire a true understanding of this one pattern, you have a key that will unlock 100 others. Diagram 19. If you stop short of really studying the joseki, how will you know where to move when some joseki saboteur plays 1 against you, white 1 against you? And if you do not know where to move, that proves that you have not studied the joseki thoroughly. Here is where rote memorization of moves will not aid you. The reason I am pressing this point about studying so hard is that this kind of situation confronts one all the time in actual play. Diagram 20. If you really understand the joseki, you will not be likely to miss such a good move as black 1. which gives black stones a base and leaves white's baseless. Show me the man who would not drop everything to play a move like this. Now we have the reason for white's low line slide to 4 in diagram 18. It was absolutely necessary to gain a base. Diagram 21. If white aimlessly plays the Joseki from 1 to 4 in this position, black 4 becomes both an extension from the upper right and a 3-space pincer against white's markstone in the upper left, a perfect dual-purpose move. This opening would be a big success for black and a big failure for white. White should use 1 to make a pincer against the upper left corner at A and start fighting from there. Or, if he must play in the upper right, he should make a counter pincer at B or C, or at least do something other than play 1 and wander into such an uninspired opening. Making the Joseki work well with the whole board is extremely important. The reason that professionals will use more than half their time on the openings is that they are thinking their way thoroughly through the difficulties that this raises. They are not just basking in the passage of time, far from it. A Joseki is not just a local problem, it bears upon the entire board. It is surprising how many amateurs, even strong ones, do not realize this. Diagram 22. Given the stones shown in the upper left corner, the Joseki's effect changes again. Black 1 is the usual 2-space high pincer, and 2 to 5 are the Joseki. This time it is black who gets the poor result. White 6 is a means of giving him an over-concentrated shape on the upper side. High-level tactics. The sequence continues up to the connection at 17, and now it is black's turn to be accused of uninspired play. Instead of 3, diagram 23, black does better to use the change of pace Joseki that begins with 1. After white 10 ends it. If white omits 10, he cannot withstand black 10, which destroys his base. Black takes Sente in the upper left corner. His diagonal contact play at 13 is a clever idea. One's enjoyment of the opening begins when one can produce ideas like this. Joseki are inseparable from the opening as a whole. Eventually, all amateurs seem to learn at least the basic Joseki, but they are universally clumsy at putting them to use. That is one of their weaknesses. Diagram 24. This is one of my teaching games. The attach and extend Joseki from black, 8 to 14, was unsuitable in this case, but let's hear from my 3-on opponent's argument in its defense. Black is weak on the upper side because of white 5, so he should set himself quickly. That's why I played solidly with 8 and so on. Well, at least he was thinking. All his thinking lacked was correctness. A much weaker player would have thought he was attacking white 7 by attaching black 8 to it. Outlandish. There's not a grain of an attack in this attachment. As black solidifies himself, observe that white does too with the moves through 13. Black's result in the attach and extend Joseki up to 14 is disadvantageous even from a local standpoint. He has played 5 stones to white's 4, but his position does not seem to be 1 stone's worth superior. The advantages of the attach and extend Joseki are easy to understand. There's not much white can do to complicate it, and, more importantly, it can work well in turning the upper side into a large territorial framework. Taken as just a corner pattern, it lacks any attraction. By now, the error in my opponent's way of thinking about the upper side should be obvious. To make matters worse, his choice of this pattern let me rob him of the key point that he should have been trying to occupy at 13 on the left side. For a 4-storm game, his start and the result he got up to 19 would have to be termed unsatisfactory. Part of the fault rests with the Joseki that began at black 8. Black 8 should have been played at 1 in diagram 25 on the next page. In this position, that is the only move, both an extension and a pincer, a beautiful point. There are many people who would not like what comes next. White's double approach at 2, thinking that it makes things messy for black. But suppose black chooses the simplest Joseki with the diagonal move at 3, and so on, up to 7. What don't they like about this? What's so messy, I'd like to ask? Compare this diagram with diagram 24. How much better is it? Can be said in one word. Infinitely. Diagram 26. This continues from diagram 25. Black has no trouble in handling white 1 to 5. Anyone who does not like the white cut at A can give Atari at 5 before connecting at 2. What black must be careful of is white B next. Black C is the reply. If black plays F, white D, black C, white E. Diagram 27. Anyone who would press on this side with black 1 does not understand Go. White will play 2 to 12 and laugh that he has never had such an easy game. Diagram 28. When black has a stone, like the one marked, the attach and extend joseki shines resplendently. The position on the left side and in the lower left corner is also ideal for black. This diagram should be a useful reference. Now, take down the joseki book that has been sleeping on your bookshelf, open it, and study it once again using the method I've prescribed. So there you have it, YouTube. We've finished another chapter. This one was very dense in diagrams and explanations. I will be putting a link to a humble OGS, review of the various diagrams and brief commentary in the link in the description box below. First time I said that, so it sounded weird. But yeah, with that was chapter 7, and I hope to see y'all here next week for chapter 8. See ya, YouTube.